It was a scorching summer afternoon, and I could already feel the heat radiating off the pavement as I pulled into the parking lot of our neighborhood pool. After a long week, nothing sounded better than a refreshing swim. I had been looking forward to this all day. With my towel slung over my shoulder and a cold drink in hand, I made my way to the entrance, nodding at a few familiar faces from the neighborhood. As I reached the gate, I swiped my keycard like I had done dozens of times before. But instead of the usual green light and the click of the lock opening, I was met with a flashing red light and a sharp beep. Confused, I tried again. Same result. Before I could process what was happening, the lifeguard on duty, a teenager who barely looked old enough to have a job, glanced up from his phone and sighed. Yeah, you're not on the approved list," he said lazily. I frowned. "What do you mean? I've been a member here for years. There must be some kind of mistake." The lifeguard shrugged, clearly uninterested in my dilemma. "Not my problem. You'll have to talk to the HOA office about it." A sinking feeling settled in my stomach. HOA problems never ended well. But surely, this was just a clerical error, something easily fixed with a quick phone call. I stepped away from the gate and pulled out my phone, dialing the HOA's office. After several rings, I was greeted by the monotone voice of Janet, the HOA's administrative assistant. "Homeowners Association, this is Janet. How can I assist you?" "Hi, Janet, this is your name. I just tried to enter the pool, and my access card isn't working. The lifeguard told me I'm not on the approved list. There must be some mistake." There was a brief pause on the other end before Janet sighed. "Oh, right. Your membership has been revoked." I blinked. "What? Why? I'm not really at liberty to discuss that over the phone. You'll have to come into the office during business hours." "Janet, business hours aren't until Monday. It's the weekend. Can't you at least tell me if this was a mistake?" Another sigh. "I'm sorry, but I can't disclose anything right now. You'll need to take it up with the board." I clenched my jaw, frustration bubbling up inside me. "So, you're telling me I just lost my pool membership without any warning or explanation?" Silence. "Janet? Have a great day," she said in an overly cheerful tone before hanging up. I stared at my phone in disbelief. What was going on? I looked back at the pool where families splashed in the water, kids laughed, and my usual lounge chair sat unoccupied. It was infuriating. I paid my HOA fees on time. I followed the rules. There was absolutely no reason why my membership should be revoked. I decided to try one last thing before giving up. Spotting Mr. Thompson, one of my neighbors who was also on the HOA board, I walked up to him. He was reclining under an umbrella, sipping a lemonade. "Hey, Mr. Thompson, do you know anything about my pool membership being revoked?" I asked, forcing a polite tone. He looked up at me over his sunglasses and smirked. "Oh, that? Yeah, the board made that decision last week." "Why?" He simply shrugged. "Can't say. You'll have to bring it up at the next HOA meeting." I felt my blood pressure rising. "So, the board just randomly decides to kick people out of the pool with no explanation?" "It wasn't random," he said with a smug grin. "It was necessary." "Necessary? What was that supposed to mean?" "Look, if you want to contest it, come to the next meeting," he said dismissively before turning back to his drink. I clenched my fists. Something was definitely wrong here. This wasn't just a mistake, this was deliberate. As I left the pool area, my frustration turned to determination. I wasn't going to just accept this without a fight. By the time I got home, I had already started digging through my emails, looking for any sort of notification from the HOA. Nothing. No warnings, no complaints, nothing indicating that my membership was at risk. I decided to take this to the next level. If the HOA wouldn't tell me why they revoked my access, I was going to find out myself. I started making a list of people to talk to, other neighbors, former board members, anyone who might have insight into this ridiculous decision. Something told me there was more to this story, and I was going to get to the bottom of it. The weekend felt like an eternity. Every time I stepped outside, I could hear the laughter and splashing from the community pool, a reminder that I had been unfairly locked out. I wasn't just going to sit back and accept it, I needed answers. The HOA had to have a reason, and I was determined to get it out of them. By Monday morning, I was at the HOA office the moment they opened. The building was small but intimidating, with that fake professional atmosphere, stiff chairs, dull carpeting, and a faint smell of coffee and paperwork. Janet, the HOA's administrative assistant, sat behind the desk, her nails clicking against the keyboard as she ignored me for a few seconds longer than necessary. "Janet," I said firmly, "I'm here about my revoked pool membership." She gave me a tight-lipped smile, the kind that said she'd rather be anywhere but here. "You'll have to speak with the board about that. I called on Saturday, and you told me you couldn't discuss it over the phone. I'm here now. So let's discuss." She sighed dramatically and tapped a few keys on her computer. "Your membership was revoked following a board decision." "Yes, I gathered that much." "Why?" Janet hesitated, then folded her hands on the desk. "I'm afraid that's confidential." "Confidential? You revoked my membership. I have the right to know why." She blinked, unimpressed. "You can bring it up at the next HOA meeting." I clenched my jaw. "When is that?" "Next month." "Next month?" I nearly laughed. "So you expect me to just accept this and wait an entire month to get an answer?" She shrugged. "That's the procedure." I stared at her, trying to keep my temper in check. "Janet, if you were in my position, would you just let this go?" For the briefest moment, I thought I saw something like sympathy flicker in her eyes, but she quickly masked it. "I'm just doing my job," she said flatly. I wasn't going to get anywhere with her. I needed another approach. If the HOA wasn't going to tell me why they revoked my membership, I was going to find out myself. I started by calling a few of my neighbors, people I knew were regulars at the pool. Maybe someone had overheard something, or at least knew if this had happened to anyone else. The first few calls led nowhere. Most people were just as clueless as I was. Some even expressed surprise that the HOA had done something like this. But then I called Mrs. Reynolds. "Ah," she said after I explained the situation. "I heard about that." I sat up. "You did? What did you hear?" "Just gossip, really," she admitted. "But I heard that someone on the board claimed you were causing problems at the pool." I frowned. "Problems? What does that even mean?" "I go there, I swim, I leave." "That's it." "I know, dear. It doesn't make much sense. But people were talking about it at the last HOA meeting. I wasn't there, but my friend Susan was. You should talk to her." I quickly got Susan's number and gave her a call. Susan didn't waste time with pleasantries. "Oh yeah, your name definitely came up at the meeting," she said. My stomach tightened. "What did they say?" "Well, one of the board members, Tracy, I think, was talking about unruly behavior at the pool. She said certain individuals were making others uncomfortable." I almost laughed. "Unruly behavior? Me? That's ridiculous." "That's what I thought too," Susan agreed. "But it sounded like she was being really vague on purpose. She never actually mentioned what you supposedly did, just that there were complaints." Complaints. Plural. Something was definitely off here. "Did anyone else get banned?" I asked. "Not that I know of. Just you." I gritted my teeth. "So someone's lying." Susan hesitated. "Look, I don't want to start trouble, but Tracy has a lot of influence on the board. If she wanted you out, she could have made it happen." I thanked her for the information and hung up. Now I had a name, Tracy. And from what I'd gathered, she was behind my revoked membership. But why? I didn't want to wait until the next HOA meeting to confront Tracy. So, later that evening, I decided to pay her a visit. Her house was a few blocks away, one of the larger, fancier ones with perfectly manicured hedges and a driveway that looked like it had never seen a single oil stain. I rang the doorbell, and a few moments later, Tracy herself opened the door. She was in her mid-40s, dressed in a pristine white blouse and beige slacks, the very image of an HOA queen. Her expression shifted the moment she saw me. "Oh," she said, feigning surprise. "What a surprise!" I wasted no time. "Tracy, why did you have my pool membership revoked?" She smiled tightly. "Oh, I didn't personally. The board made that decision." "Because of complaints? About my behavior?" I folded my arms. "Funny, I don't remember doing anything wrong." She sighed, acting as if she was the one being inconvenienced. "Look, your name. We received multiple complaints about your presence at the pool. Some residents felt uncomfortable." I narrowed my eyes. "Uncomfortable how?" She hesitated just a fraction too long. "I have no idea what you're talking about," I continued. "No one's ever told me I was a problem. And I checked around, no one else lost their membership. Just me." Tracy's expression hardened. "Perhaps it's best if we don't discuss this on my doorstep." "Oh, I think we should. Because right now, it looks like you personally had me kicked out of the pool for no reason." She pressed her lips together. "If you have an issue, bring it up at the next meeting." "I will. And I'll make sure the entire neighborhood knows that this decision was based on nothing." For the first time, I saw something flash in her eyes, uncertainty. She hadn't expected me to fight back. I took a step back. "Enjoy your evening, Tracy. I'll see you at the meeting." As I walked away, I felt a surge of determination. Something shady was going on, and I wasn't going to stop until I found out the truth. I couldn't sleep that night. My mind kept racing, piecing together every bit of information I had gathered. The HOA, specifically Tracy, had orchestrated my ban from the pool, but why? What had I done to deserve this treatment? The vague excuse of making residents uncomfortable didn't hold any weight, and I wasn't about to let them get away with it. I needed proof. Proof that Tracy was lying. Proof that I wasn't the real issue. And proof that something bigger was at play. The first thing I did the next morning was head to the pool. Not to swim, obviously. I wasn't even allowed inside, but to observe. If Tracy had made up complaints against me, there had to be something, or someone, she was covering up. I parked my car across the street, sunglasses on, pretending to scroll through my phone while watching the entrance. It was a quiet morning, mostly older residents coming in for a relaxing swim. Everything seemed normal, until I saw Tracy herself walk in. Why would she be here this early? Curious, I got out of my car and casually walked toward the side of the fence, staying out of sight but within earshot. Then I heard voices that immediately made my blood boil. "Don't worry about it," Tracy was saying. "We took care of the problem." "Are you sure?" a man's voice replied. "We can't afford any disruptions." There was a pause before Tracy reassured him. "Yes. His membership was revoked. He won't be coming back." I clenched my fists. So they were talking about me. But what did they mean by disruptions? Carefully, I peeked through a small gap in the fence. Tracy was speaking with a man I didn't recognize, tall, mid-40s, with slicked back hair and an expensive-looking polo shirt. He looked vaguely familiar, but I couldn't place him. Then something happened that made everything click into place. Tracy and the man exchanged a glance before he handed her an envelope. She quickly tucked it into her purse, nodding in satisfaction. A bribe. My stomach twisted. This wasn't about me at all. Determined to find out more, I spent the next few hours digging into Tracy's background. With a little social media stalking and some well-placed calls to a few neighbors who had lived here longer than me, I uncovered some interesting facts. That man at the pool? His name was Greg Simmons, and he was a wealthy businessman who had recently moved into the neighborhood. Rumor had it that Greg was throwing private parties at the pool, exclusive events for his high-profile friends. Apparently, these weren't just casual get-togethers. They were full-blown, unapproved gatherings that violated HOA policies. And who was allowing this to happen? Tracy. I dug up old HOA meeting notes and found something even more suspicious. Tracy had personally pushed for a special use clause in the pool's rules just a few months ago. It allowed certain individuals to rent out the pool for private events. That wasn't normal. That's when it all made sense. I had been banned because I was there too often. I was a regular. I might have noticed what was happening and asked questions. I might have been a witness to something they didn't want getting out. So they got rid of me. Now that I had a lead, I needed proof, something concrete to take down Tracy and expose what she was doing. I decided to go straight to the source: security footage. Every HOA-managed facility, including the pool, had surveillance cameras. If Greg and his guests had been throwing unauthorized parties, there had to be footage of it. But how would I get my hands on it? That's when I had an idea. Janet. The HOA secretary may have been dismissive before, but I had a feeling she wasn't thrilled about Tracy's antics either. If anyone could accidentally give me access to those security logs, it was her. The next morning, I walked into the HOA office, playing it cool. Janet barely glanced up from her computer. "I'm not here to argue," I said quickly. "I just need some information. Off the record." She sighed. "What do you want?" I leaned in slightly. "I know why my membership was revoked. And I know it wasn't because of complaints." That got her attention. She hesitated, looking around as if someone might overhear. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Come on, Janet. You've worked here long enough to know when something shady is happening." I lowered my voice. "It's about the pool parties. The ones Tracy's been covering up for Greg Simmons." She stiffened. "Bingo. You know something, don't you?" I pressed. "You've seen things." Janet swallowed hard, then muttered. "Even if I did, I can't do anything about it." "Maybe not," I said. "But I can." She hesitated for a long moment. Then, she sighed and leaned in. "If you happen to check the maintenance logs, you might find something interesting. They're kept in the back office." I nodded, understanding the hint. "Thanks, Janet." I walked out of the office, my heart pounding. I had a way in. That evening, I waited until the HOA office was nearly empty. Slipping in, I made my way to the back where Janet had hinted the logs were kept. After rummaging through some files, I found a folder labeled Pool Maintenance and Surveillance Logs. Flipping through it, I found exactly what I needed. Multiple records of special event requests that were never approved by the full HOA board. Surveillance footage timestamps that mysteriously had gaps, missing hours of recording. Notes about VIP reservations that weren't in the official records. And then I hit the jackpot. A printed still from the security footage. It showed Greg Simmons and a group of guests drinking at the pool, past closing hours. And standing next to him? Tracy. I grinned. This was it. The proof I needed. They had banned me for no reason, just to cover up their rule-breaking. And now, I had the power to take them down. I carefully copied everything I found, making sure to leave no trace of my search. The next HOA meeting was coming up, and I was going to make sure everyone saw this. Tracy and Greg thought they had silenced me. But they were about to learn a hard lesson. They messed with the wrong person. Armed with undeniable proof, I knew it was time to go on the offensive. Tracy and Greg had orchestrated my removal from the pool just to cover up their shady dealings, but they had no idea I had uncovered their little scheme. The next step was figuring out how to expose them in a way they couldn't ignore or cover up. I had several options. I could go directly to the HOA board, but Tracy was part of it. She would do everything in her power to shut me down. I could leak the information online, but that might not have the immediate impact I needed. Then an idea hit me. The HOA general meeting was coming up in a few days. A mandatory, public meeting where all residents were encouraged to attend and voice their concerns. If I played my cards right, I could turn the entire community against Tracy and Greg right in front of the people they were supposed to serve. I knew I couldn't do this alone. If I stormed into the meeting waving my evidence around, Tracy would find a way to spin it against me. I needed support, witnesses, allies, people who had been affected by their corruption. So, I started talking to my neighbors. First, I approached Mrs. Reynolds, an elderly woman who had lived in the neighborhood for over 20 years. She had always been friendly, and I knew she was active in HOA affairs. "Oh dear," she said, shaking her head when I told her what had happened. "I knew something was off. I've seen people at that pool past hours. I even called the HOA about it once, but they never responded." Exactly what I suspected. Then, I found Dan and Lisa, a couple who had recently moved in. When I told them about Tracy's scheme, Lisa's eyes widened. "So that's why my cousin's rental request was denied," she exclaimed. "We wanted to have a small gathering for our daughter's birthday, but Tracy told us the pool wasn't available. Now it makes sense, she was saving it for Greg's private parties." One by one, more neighbors started sharing their grievances. People had noticed the inconsistencies but hadn't connected the dots, until now. By the end of the day, I had at least a dozen people who were willing to back me up. Now, all that was left was to bring the evidence to light. The community center was packed when I arrived. Dozens of residents filled the seats, murmuring amongst themselves. Tracy sat at the front, looking smug as ever, while Greg was nowhere in sight, probably too important to deal with. Neighborhood matters. I took a deep breath. This was it. As the meeting began, residents took turns discussing routine concerns, landscaping fees, street repairs, minor disputes. I waited patiently, holding my folder of evidence. Then, when the floor was open for additional concerns, I stood up. "I have something to bring to the board's attention," I said, stepping forward. Tracy's expression shifted immediately. She knew something was coming, but she had no idea how bad it was about to get. "I was recently banned from the HOA pool," I continued loud enough for everyone to hear. "For no reason. I was given a vague excuse about making people uncomfortable, but after some digging, I found the real reason." The room went quiet. Tracy forced a laugh. "Sir, we're not here to rehash personal grievances. If you have an issue, you can take it up privately." "Oh, this isn't just my issue," I interrupted, holding up the security footage still. "This affects everyone in this neighborhood." Murmurs spread through the crowd. I turned to the audience. While honest residents were being denied pool access, Greg Simmons was throwing private, unauthorized parties, and Tracy was letting it happen. Gasps. Whispers. Tracy's face went pale. That's absurd." "Is it?" I pulled out the HOA logs. "Here's documentation showing that multiple VIP reservations were scheduled, but never reported to the board. Here are missing surveillance logs for nights when Greg's events were taking place. And here," I held up the photo, "is proof that Tracy was there, personally attending these events." Dead silence. Then chaos erupted. "You mean to tell me I was denied a pool reservation while this was happening?" Lisa shouted. "My grandkids weren't allowed in last summer. Why?" another elderly resident demanded. "This is corruption," someone yelled. Tracy stood, flustered. "This is nonsense. You're just a bitter resident trying to stir up trouble." "Oh, really?" I smirked, flipping to the financial logs. "Because I also found suspicious payments made under pool maintenance, even though no major repairs were scheduled." "Who was receiving those funds?" Tracy's mouth opened, then shut. She knew she was caught. Residents bombarded the board with questions. Tracy stammered, trying to defend herself, but it was no use. The evidence was overwhelming. Then, the HOA president, Mr. Holloway, an older gentleman who had always seemed fair, spoke up. "I think we've heard enough." His voice was firm. "Tracy, these are serious allegations. Until a full investigation is conducted, you are suspended from the HOA board immediately." Tracy gasped. "You can't." "I can. And I am." The audience cheered. After the meeting, residents came up to thank me. Mrs. Reynolds patted my shoulder. "You did good, kid. We need more people like you in this neighborhood." Lisa grinned. "I think you just became a local hero." Even Mr. Holloway pulled me aside. We'll be reviewing all recent HOA financial decisions. If there's more corruption, we'll find it. As for Tracy? She stormed out of the meeting, humiliated. Greg? He still wasn't there. Probably off enjoying one of his exclusive gatherings. But now that an investigation was underway, I had a feeling his little operation wouldn't last much longer. And the best part? A week later, I got a letter in the mail. My pool membership had been reinstated. I should have been happy. I had won. Tracy had been suspended from the HOA board, Greg's shady dealings were under investigation, and my pool membership had been reinstated. But something didn't feel right. For days after the meeting, I noticed strange things happening. My mailbox was mysteriously left open every morning. A few of my trash bins went missing. At first, I brushed it off as coincidences, until my car was egged one night. It was clear someone wasn't happy about what I had done. One evening, just as I was settling in for the night, there was a loud knock at my door. When I opened it, I found Greg Simmons standing there. Greg had always been somewhat of a mystery. He was rarely seen at HOA meetings, and when he was, he never spoke much. He carried himself like someone who believed they were untouchable, always above the rules, always in control. But tonight? He looked furious. "We need to talk," he said, stepping forward like he was going to push past me. I blocked his path. "I don't think we do," Greg scoffed, looking me up and down. "You really thought you did something, didn't you?" "I did." I folded my arms. "And so did the rest of the neighborhood." Greg let out a humorless laugh. "Let me make one thing clear. I don't lose." He jabbed a finger at me. "You got Tracy suspended? Big deal. Do you really think that changes anything? Do you think you actually have power here?" I didn't flinch. "I think the truth has power. And it's already exposed you." Greg took a step closer, lowering his voice. "You should have left it alone. You don't know who you're messing with." I felt my jaw tighten. "Are you threatening me?" He smirked. "Not at all. I'm just saying, accidents happen. Things get difficult for people who don't mind their own business." I took a deep breath. Greg was trying to intimidate me, but I wasn't going to back down. "You should leave," I said firmly. He gave me one last long stare, then turned on his heel. As he walked away, he called over his shoulder, "This isn't over." The next day, I decided to install a security camera. If Greg or anyone else tried to mess with me, I wanted evidence. And it was a good thing I did. Just 3 days later, I woke up to a notice on my front door. It was from the HOA. I had been reported for excessive noise disturbances and unauthorized gatherings. I stared at the paper, stunned. I hadn't thrown a single party, nor had I done anything remotely loud. Then my phone buzzed. It was a notification from my security camera. I opened the app, and what I saw made my blood boil. In the dead of night, Greg had sent a group of people to my house. They stood outside, blasting loud music, shouting, and intentionally creating a scene. One of them even pulled out his phone, recording the whole thing like they were setting up fake proof against me. And right on cue, a masked figure walked up to my door and slipped the HOA complaint notice inside. Greg was trying to frame me. I didn't waste any time. I downloaded the footage and headed straight to the HOA president, Mr. Holloway. When I walked into his office, he sighed. "Let me guess, another problem?" I placed my phone on his desk and played the footage. His expression darkened as he watched Greg's people deliberately making noise outside my house, staging the entire disturbance. "This is outrageous," he muttered. "He's retaliating. He's trying to get me fined," I said. "Or worse, kicked out of the HOA." Mr. Holloway exhaled sharply. "I knew Greg had influence, but this? This is a whole new level of misconduct." "So what happens now?" I asked. Mr. Holloway looked at me, then leaned back in his chair. "I'll be honest with you. Greg has connections. He's got people on the board who still support him, even after the pool scandal. But with this footage? He just gave us the leverage we needed. I sat up straighter. What are you saying? I'm saying it's time we clean house. At the next emergency HOA meeting, Mr. Holloway wasted no time. He played the security footage for everyone to see. Gasps filled the room as residents watched Greg's people orchestrating the fake complaints against me. Then Mr. Holloway spoke. This level of manipulation is unacceptable. The HOA exists to protect homeowners, not to be used as a personal weapon against them. Greg, who had been sitting in the back with his usual smug expression, finally lost his cool. This is ridiculous, he shouted, standing up. You're all acting like I'm some villain. You are the villain, someone snapped from the crowd. Greg sneered. You can't get rid of me. Actually, Mr. Holloway said, lifting a document. We can. He held up a formal HOA expulsion notice. For repeated misconduct, corruption, and abuse of power, the board has voted to permanently remove Greg Simmons from the HOA. Effective immediately. Silence. Then applause. Greg's face turned red with fury. You can't do this. We just did, Mr. Holloway said. Security escorted Greg out of the meeting. As he passed me, he shot me a murderous glare. This isn't over, he hissed. But for once, I wasn't afraid. Because as of that moment, Greg Simmons was no longer my problem. With Greg gone, things finally started improving in the neighborhood. The HOA began revising their policies, making sure no board member had unchecked power like Tracy and Greg had. Tracy? Without Greg's protection, she resigned from the board before she could be officially removed. And me? I got an apology letter from the HOA. They not only reinstated my pool membership, but they also waived my HOA fees for the next 6 months as compensation for the stress they had caused me. The best part? Greg's house went up for sale 2 months later. Rumor had it that without his HOA connections, he couldn't get away with his usual scams. No one trusted him anymore. And just like that, the biggest problem in our community was gone for good.